The phenomenon of the rich getting richer while the poor get poorer remains dark but true. But what are the reasons behind this imbalance? It's simply the United States trillion-dollar crisis. Rather than this crisis affecting the entire populace, only the average American citizen suffers the effects. What is this crisis about and how have the elites enslaved Americans? Stay with us in this video to find out. The United States of America has one of the world's strongest economies. The country is an awesome political, economic, and social state without any flaws, and it can only get better from here. These are the notions you're used to hearing, and these are the ways the government and the ultra-wealthy would rather have you think. But do you want to know what they don't tell you? They don't tell you that the US economy might be heading for a recession in a few years' time due to the ridiculous inflation rates, which hit a 41-year record high just a couple of years ago. They don't tell you about the diminishing household incomes and the issues in supply chains. They don't tell you about the energy price spikes or about the inverted yield curve. And most importantly, they don't tell you about the biggest tool used to enslave the average American: debt. The United States has been a land of free credit for so long that it's now in the fibers of the nation's economy. From expenses as tiny and inconsequential as a cup of coffee to the more hefty ones, like purchasing a house or a car, Americans have become accustomed to paying with one swipe of the card despite having no money. On the surface, the credit card and debt culture offers everyone an opportunity to live a comfortable life and make business ideas come to reality. It gives a mirage of a leveled playing field for anyone and everyone to make wealth and enjoy life, but in actuality, it's only a scam to keep the average American in bondage of unpayable loans. To give you an idea of how deep this scheme runs, let's consider the entire United States of America as a whole. Did you know that as of today, on a global scale, the US is the world's largest international creditor? A simple interpretation is that the nation has so much wealth, it can afford to loan out massive sums of it. But here's the twist. At the same time, the United States is also the world's largest international debtor. Now, that's probably harder for you to understand, but it goes to show just how the phenomenon of debt, while offering an avenue to pay today's bills, forever keeps the borrower as a slave to the lender. In many ways, the average American citizen owns nothing for most of their adult lives, seeing as they get to have a mortgage on their home, get financial aid for college, get a loan for a car, and use credit cards to purchase everything else. And in case you're wondering why it's never been obvious how much of a trap the credit system is, well, that's because it's been functional even before your parents were born. As far back as the 1800s, retailers promoted buying things on credit and paying back by installments. The only difference is that back then there was widespread lending discrimination, but today it's no more. Over the past couple of decades, rather than let lenders feel stigmatized about being in debt, which would further reduce the amount of debts people got into, the epitome of the credit score was introduced. Since then, the idea that having a larger credit score was a sign of financial responsibility has gradually pushed even more people into debt. Today, the average American is being bullied by society into believing it's more important to have a good credit score than it is to avoid paying on credit altogether. Landlords, car dealers, some corporate job employers, and even insurance companies now consider a healthy credit score when offering services or employment. Having no debt at all is now deemed a flaw, and having a healthy 3-digit score is proof that you're in charge of your finances and can be trusted with more money. Unfortunately for everyone in the system, it's become the norm for so long that no one notices how ridiculous it is. Now, the moment it all starts to make sense to you is when you question where all the money comes from. We mean, if no one is actually paying for their purchases immediately and getting it on credit, then how is there money in circulation? Primarily, the loan comes from the banks, but the banks are only able to disperse those funds because of the investments of the ultra-wealthy. And in the same vein, when people begin to pay back on their debts with the ever-increasing interest rates, it's also the ultra-rich that get the dividends. As if that's not bad enough, though, the effects of the credit card and debt crisis in the United States have translated beyond the personal and domestic landscape. Many people don't know it, but as a result of the normalized debt culture, the entire country is actually in debt. And we're not talking about hundreds of millions or even billions. Nope. As of June 2020, the United States of America owed over $26 trillion to its creditors. Fast forward to today, and the national debt is at a staggering $36.2 trillion, meaning every single person in America owes over $106,000 if we're calculating based on averages. This means the debt crisis has nearly doubled in just the past 5 years, but it's getting worse. As a result of this exponentially rising federal debt, the worries of many financial analysts have gradually been brought to life over the last few years. But before we get into the effects, you should have a proper understanding of the concept of a national debt. The first thing you should know is that virtually every country in the world has a debt level, some more than others. This federal debt is basically just the amount of money the government owes creditors. The ability of a government to pay off its debt in proportion to the economy supplying the finances to repay said debts is what's known as gross domestic product. Now, the United States currently has the highest GDP in the world thanks to the high levels of industrialization, and ordinarily that should nullify how hefty the country's debt is, but unfortunately it's not that simple. Despite high GDP levels, the US debt has pulsating effects on the citizens, and the bulk of these effects are not felt by those in the active labor market, but by the younger generation. That's right, owing so much money as a nation might seem cool to you now because it keeps funds in circulation to finance the credit cycle. However, the ripple effects, as you'll soon see, will be much greater for the younger generation. Right now, the national debt is driven higher by 3 major factors, the first of which is the rapid demographic change. This is because the majority of the baby boom generation will begin to retire. Statistically, 10,000 people will turn 65 and have to retire every day from now till 2030. And what's more, the life expectancy of this generation of retirees has also improved slightly in recent years thanks to better healthcare services. But here's the thing, the more retirees are around, the more money has to go into pensions and retirement packages. And the longer these retirees live, the more pressure on the federal budget to take out hefty international loans to ensure the elderly are well taken care of. Which leads us to the next causative factor of high national debt, rising healthcare costs. Healthcare has always been absolutely vital in the United States' economic future, consuming nearly 1/5 of our entire economy thanks to its rapid development and growth. Unfortunately, the improvement in this sector also means it becomes more expensive for the average citizen to afford. Currently, the cost of healthcare in America is nearly double that in other advanced countries. So yeah, the development is good, but its effect on the nation's finances plays a major role in the skyrocketing federal debt. And the third contributing factor is inadequate revenues. This is a pretty obvious one for anyone working in the corporate market in today's economy. Legislators and members of Congress have put many policies into place which naturally should benefit the nation's economy. However, the US tax system is faulty and doesn't generate enough revenues to cover the spending policymakers have enacted, while other countries, resulting in mounting federal debts. At the moment, these issues don't reflect on our day-to-day lives. Retirees are being paid what they deserve, the healthcare system is improving, lives are being saved, and the taxpayer has enough to take home after an honest day's work. Despite the government being forced into taking up more debts, it's all sunshine and roses on the outside. However, all these are temporary. As the years go by and the debt ratios continue to increase, just like on a domestic level, the international creditors funding the United States federal debts will begin to increase the interest rates. When that happens, the risk of non-payment begins to increase, and the debt ratio that seems healthy today will begin to equal the GDP produced. As if that's not bad enough, when the GDP and debt ratios get to that point, it's likely the demand for the US Treasury becomes much lower than it is today, resulting in increased interest rates. The value of the dollar gets damaged, the national economy enters sluggish decline, and the United States creditors will lose trust in her and turn to invest in other countries. It's literally just a set of dominoes, and although it might take decades for the last piece to fall, it will eventually get to that point. And by then, who will be left holding the bag? Well, our future generation, your kids and grandkids. Now you see how damning this trillion-dollar crisis can get. But there is a glimmer of hope, though. It is possible to reduce the national debt. There are actually so many approaches to be taken toward this, like the government cutting back on expenses, increasing taxes, and even a total restructuring of the economic climate. So yeah, all hope isn't lost, but between you and us, These changes have to be implemented soon, or it might be too late in a few years' time. So what do you think? Will the United States somehow escape this trillion-dollar crisis? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section and enjoy our other videos.